We're now joined by Travis Roeder, Sic'Em 365 football analyst. He's going to join us on Mondays just after 5 o'clock and break down what we saw the weekend before and also a couple of notes from what he looks at in his perspective. And Travis with Paul Catalina, Craig Smoke. Craig's back, David Smoke. Craig's back with us tomorrow. Travis, thanks for your time. You asked me to ask Dave Aranda about how did they mix letting the offense get their legs underneath of them and yet also allow the defense with Ron Roberts and what they do. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to even listen to his answer yet.
Yeah, I got about, I guess I must have just not gotten to it, so I was able to listen to about the first half or so. I guess you were able to ask him that. Yeah,
I did, and he said a good. You know, he says this a lot to anybody, but I appreciate it. He said good question. But I'll let you dig into that if for anything you're going to do maybe later in the week. But do you think that that's kind of a like let Roberts and his defense do their thing, but also make sure you don't overwhelm some of the younger players on offense? Is that what it's about?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at. No, I was really hoping we'd get to talk to Nebraska to see what's going on. You don't want to talk about
no,
last week?
No. we have, and now I know what it was like to be a Baylor fan for so many years.
I'm just messing with you. So as to your question about kind of balancing, letting the offense get their feet underneath them versus kind of letting the defense cook. I mean, I just think that's the most fascinating aspect of what head coaches have to do is to how to manage a program. And it's, as I talked about last time, there's really no programs out there that can build consistent top 10 defenses and top 10 offenses because you really have to prioritize what you want to do in practice. And so I think that's just a really interesting question because I think this staff feels really good. And I know I certainly do about this, kind of really being a top 10 defense, being better than last year's defense. I've been kind of gone out on a limb and said that, but I feel very confident in that. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the level of moxie, the level of confidence, the level of assuredness that defense is playing with. And so where I think the defense kind of is right now is the defense has their legs underneath them. They're really confident in what they're doing. It's important to remember they've been under Dave and Ron Roberts for this is their third year now, whereas it's just the second year for the offense under Jeff Grimes, right? And so I think they really were kind of asserting themselves. They're kind of almost putting together the final touches on what they want to do defensively. And so that's kind of that's really kind of towing the line there. Do you want to kind of just let your defense kind of go all the way out and kind of do every little, add every new wrinkle to the system, or do you want to kind of prioritize letting your offense execute against kind of more vanilla looks defensively? I think the answer to that probably, I'm interested to hear Aranda's answer, is you got to do a bit of both. You got to give your offense some chance to set their foot in the ground, but if you're going to hang your hat on defense all year, you better make sure that they're prepared in fall camp too.
Travis, just looking at the depth chart at wide receiver, I would say some pleasant surprises based on their recruiting rankings that guys are stepping in, particularly Seth Jones and Hal Presley, getting those. I mean, whatever it means on the depth chart, that is a lot of or first team nods.
Yeah, I was pretty excited to see Seth get that job. Obviously that job being he's going to start this week, kind of reevaluate it every week, right? But he's ahead of Josh Cameron, and I think we saw this spring, and we know from everything we've heard about Josh Cameron, the former walk-on, what he brings to the table. And given his level of work ethic and the way he's kind of worked himself up into being a legitimate, 2D player coming from just being a walk-on a year ago, that Josh didn't lose this job. He was playing well. He's doing his thing. So what that tells me is that Seth really won this job. And Seth Jones out of Shadow Creek is, you watch that high school film and you just think, the sky is the limit for this dude. He's an athletic freak. He doesn't have the biggest size in the world. He's kind of like 5'11". My comparison, I went back and when I did his recruit evaluation like 3 years ago, I compared him to Tylan Wallace, who was the Oklahoma State receiver back then, because they're both 5'11" guys who just play much bigger than their listed size. They kind of have all around games. So as you said, not a lot of experience, but again, like I said, that Seth wouldn't have gotten that job if it was everyone was playing poorly, and then they're like, oh, well, let's just go with Seth. What that really tells me with him kind of getting that nod over Josh Cameron is that he must have played really, really well. I know in a few of the clips they've released over the last month of fall camp, there's some clips of Seth making some ridiculous plays. So I'm excited about that because I think Baylor needs at least one wide receiver this year who they can hang their hat on to make some plays for them. And so I think Seth's a great candidate for that.
Sometimes when players like Tyquan Thornton leave, or even R.J. Sneed transfers to Colorado, the defensive backs who, of course, moved on, or Bernard at linebacker, et cetera, it's like those are tons and tons of starts and experience. Yep. But isn't a team or a program that's real able to just have that next person up? I don't know if they're there yet, but do you feel like they're close to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain level of ability and production that only can be bought with experience, right? So there's really no such thing as a player coming in and instantly being as good as the guy before him, unless he was better all along, right? And so I think that's really where the development curve comes in, where I think, especially for the take Terrell's position this year, is Matt Jones going to be playing as well in game 2 as Terrell Bernard was playing in the Sugar Bowl last year? Absolutely not. There's just no chance of that. But what I think you see great programs do, and I think this is what you were alluding to, Smokey, is they're able to engender and generate a level of organizational buy-in that kids are bought in from essentially day one on campus. This is what guys like Nick Saban and stuff have been so good at. It's not just that Nick Saban recruits the best players. It's that he's able to have a true freshman and a redshirt freshman go through a walkthrough and not be thinking about, what girl they're going to go out with later that night. They're thinking about, okay, in 2 years, I know I'm not starting right now, but in 2 years, this is going to be me. And all this preparation, all this mental preparation I'm putting in right now is going to help me in the future. And that is the kind of, mental reps. If you've listened to Dave Aranda talk before in coaching clinics, he talks about the importance of establishing the importance of everything you do. And walkthroughs are one of those things he talks about. He's like, you can't allow these young guys' minds to wander because eventually you're going to need them. And so I think that's when you see this year when Baylor's relying on guys now who were backups last year, if they were fully bought in last year, that's where it pays off now.
Were there any surprises to you on the depth chart other than what we've already talked about?
Nothing majorly surprising. I was really happy, and I don't mean this against Mose Jeffrey at left guard, but I was happy to see that Micah Mazzucca, I don't know how to say his last name.
Like Bazooka.
Mazzucca.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. I was really happy to see him win that left guard job, and it's really because he might be the most impressive offensive lineman Baylor has. Definitely of like the interior guys, talking the 2 guard positions in the center. He's about as good as it gets. He's got an NFL body, NFL athleticism. For him, it's just always been a question of consistency. I mean, he's only a redshirt freshman now this year, I think. Or I guess he would be a sophomore. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's a young guy, and consistency has been his bugaboo. But physically, just a total freak. And I think when you look at guys like Connor Galvin, Jacob Gall, Grant Miller, these guys are all very, very good offensive linemen. But when you think about their best strengths, I don't think you would say power for any of them. And so I think what Micah gives them at left guard is an ability to truly kind of move the pile, get some movement off the snap. Again, that's not all those other 3 guys I just named are terrific offensive linemen who could all be all conference linemen. Obviously, Connor Galvin is the returning Big 12 offensive lineman of the year. He's very, very good. But I think Micah gives them kind of another dimension of power that they didn't have last year at that position. And Baylor's going to be relying on their running game a lot this year. And so that was a pretty exciting one for me to see. Otherwise, no real big surprises. And what I liked about that Mazzucca position, him winning that left guard spot, is there was no or. So I know him and Mose were rotating a lot early this camp, but it seems like Mike has done a really good job of solidifying himself there.
Travis, when the game kicks off, and Baylor's a heavy favorite against Albany, but when the game kicks off, where are you going to look for something that you need to see? Where is it going to be?
That's a terrific question, Sophie. I was actually just texting with a couple of my buddies about that yesterday. I said, in 2020, what I remember about that first game against Kansas is that within about a quarter, we were all just like, oh my God, Jalen Petrie is just incredible. Where did this come from? Like, his athleticism was just popping all over the field. And obviously last year they opened at Texas State, so it was a little bit harder to pop. But I would think a big impression we got from that first game was that this offense was a lot more competent than we might have otherwise assumed, and that Gary looked like a pretty good quarterback. And so I'm really curious I think in this first game, stats don't mean anything. Like Chapin's going to throw for whether he throws for 200 yards or 350 yards, like it doesn't matter. And honestly, really how the team performs overall, like total points and all that kind of stuff doesn't really matter to me. My friend my podcast mate, Jeff Davis, shared a great quote from Mac Brown, who said, Mac Brown said, when you play a bad team, you can only learn two things. You either learn that you're also bad or that you learn that you might not be bad. And so, the overall quality of the team is not something you're really going to get out of a game like this. But what you will get is we can say, wow, Al Walcott, he looks just like Jalen Petrie. He's making plays all over the field. Or Matt Jones is a difference maker. I think you really look for those kind of individual players to pop that you can hang your hat on for the rest of the season, because individual ability is really what shines through here. Don't tell that to the players before the game. That's like the worst thing they could be thinking about in a football game. But that's kind of what I'll have my eyes on there for guys stepping into new positions and who's popping and looks like they've really grown since last year.
Good stuff, Travis. Look forward to having you Mondays. We'll have some evidence. I know that it's a game that Baylor's supposed to do, what they want, you would think, but you never know. And the good news, again, is there's evidence, there's film, and we'll be able to kind of break that down with you. Look forward to it. Thanks for your time every Monday.
Thank you, Smokey.
All right, that's Travis Roeder, Sic'Em 365 football analyst. Next segment will be David Hellman and the Cowboys. But it was